Hello and welcome to episode 13 of OCNI's Leader Series, a rare opportunity to get to know the individuals who make the key strategic and operational decisions for the industry. Today we are honored to have Carla Carmichael, VP Decommissioning Strategies and CCNS Lead at Ontario Power Generation, join us. A bit of housekeeping before we begin. Please note that this webinar will be recorded and uploaded into our members portal for viewing. Should you have any questions, please add them into the live Q&A feature on the right-hand side of the screen. It is accessible by clicking the question mark chat bubble in the menu bar on your screen. I will now hand it over to our event host, OCNI President and CEO, Ron Oberth.
Well, thank you, Rachel, and thanks for our guests who have joined us today. And in particular, thank you, Carla, for taking time out of your busy day. Let's hope that the 13th episode of this is not an unlucky one. I'm sure. Let me start by recognizing that I'm coming to you today from the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Scugog Island First Nation. Carla, do you know, I mean, Carla's actually coming to us from her location in Florida. Do you have a land acknowledgement that you want to give? Other than your beautiful.
Now you're putting me on the spot here. Yes, I think compared to Canada, the U.S. is not as progressive, I think, and doesn't recognize it as much. So a lesson learned for all of us, right?
Yeah, and it's proud to be Canadians on this issue.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. The other thing that's relevant is this is still International Women's Month, so that's a good reason to celebrate with you today, Carla, to hear about your journey as a senior leader in our industry and facing the hurdles that women may still be facing. But before we get into some of the questions, I always like to start with, tell us a bit about your own personal journey. You don't have to go back to when you were a little girl, but at some point, just tell us about how you progressed and how you came to where you are in the nuclear industry.
Oh, sure. So I was fortunate to be able to join this industry. I have to say it's, when I look back at my career over 30 years, I've been in several industries. And this was the latest one, and it's been 13 years. 13th episode, 13 years.
Best 13 out there. Right? Best 13.
And I would say it's an amazing industry, and I've loved every minute of it. Still do. Very challenging yet rewarding, I would say. And I think too, seeing this industry move from sort of under the undercurrent of, oh, it's the nuclear, we don't talk about it too much, to sort of this renaissance and this vision that nuclear is the future of clean energy and climate change. Just being part of that has been, the best time to be here as well, right? But going back, we were joking just before we got on live that, I am an accountant by profession, and I'm a terrible accountant right now. Don't ask me to do any of that. But having the numbers background and the basics, the financial basics, I think is beneficial to any role you play. We're talking about the fact that I had done some marketing, that it played a pivotal role in me getting that role and being able to be successful in that role. And I think that's that core competency is very useful. But I would say that being able to go from industry to industry, or having the opportunity to do that, as well as being provided the opportunity to do various roles in all those industries, has been phenomenal career for me. And I guess we'll talk a bit about how I did that, and what skill sets they were. But I would say that if I could say this to anybody, is just, keep your options open and don't limit yourself just because, say, you've been in the nuclear industry for 10 years doesn't mean you can't go to another industry and be very happy.
Well, that's nice to hear, because accountants, as you may know, are the blunt of a lot of jokes about accountants and how boring they are and all the rest of it. But it's refreshing to see someone who's dynamic as you are, with an accounting background, and how you have benefited from that background. You know, it's like having sort of a legal degree or an accounting degree. It translates into a lot of opportunities, doesn't it?
It's true. It's true. I mean, every profession, gets the stereotype. I'm married to a lawyer, as many of you know, and so it's a bit of a joke, who's the most boring. But I would say, it doesn't matter what background you have, what degree you have. I mean, engineers aren't always known as the most exciting people either.
Oh, there's a lot of engineering jokes too.
But I know a lot of exciting engineers, so.
Yeah.
And Ron, you might be one of them.
Well, I'll try to be. But you talked about your journey. I'm sure there were a few people along the way that had an influence on you and gave you some advice and guidance. Can you name some of the mentors that inspired you or coached you along this journey?
Okay, I never name people because,
inadvertently
I might forget some amazing people along the way. But what I can say is that over the 30 plus years, I've had a lot of mentors, a lot of coaches, a lot of sponsors. And I always say it's, and a lot of bosses and managers. And I always say it's sort of like, I liken it to the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Where you can have some very good managers, leaders, you can have some bad ones, and you can have some pretty ugly ones too, right? But one of the things I've learned over this time is that you can learn from every one of them, right? You can learn what you like and what drives you as a person or supports you, or you like the way they're, running their business. Or you can not like something people are doing, but you can learn from that, right? You can learn not to do that, or you can learn the impact it has on people and say, this is something that I don't want to, do or emulate. So I think, just recognizing that, the world is made of imperfect people, but you can really learn from that, I think is important as you kind of progress through your journey of your career. The things that I look for that have made me love some bosses, I guess, is ones that are really authentic and honest, because I think that's really important, because people want to see the genuine you, and they want to see, they want to really know you as a person, recognize that you're just normal like everybody else, and that you're approachable, and you can only do that if you're authentic, right? And also sometimes honesty, right? You, as a leader, you have to tell the truth. People want to hear the truth. It's not always pleasant all the time, or things that are happening you may not want to really hear, but I think it's important for people to be honest, authentic and honest. And then there's leaders that set vision, right? And are kind of relentless towards achieving it. And so those are the things that inspire me too. So there's just a couple of things of what I would emulate in a leader: authenticity, honesty, and sort of drive for vision.
That's a nice, succinct summary. And I like your comment about learning. I have a good friend who was a very competitive athlete, and she said, "I never lost, I just learned."
Right, exactly.
That's a better way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
let's turn now to your OPG career. I noticed from your resume, Carla, that you were VP Nuclear Finance, Director of Nuclear Benchmarking and Planning, VP Commercial Management and Project Assurance, and now EVP Decommissioning Strategy and CNS Lead. So quite a few roles in, I guess, 11 or 13 years. 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about what's it like transitioning?
You missed one.
Did I?
You actually missed the one where I met you, Ron.
Oh,
the one I was, I led Canadian Nuclear Partners. Well, that's how we met.
Oh, of course, CNP. Oh my God.
That was no, I just, didn't want to criticize, but it was just funny because that's the one I actually met you in, and we started working together.
And that was a lot of fun. I'll bet that. I mean,
it was fun.
It was a lot of fun. You got to do some exciting offshore stuff. So can you tell us about the challenges you faced in transitioning? Each time you have a new role, new people, new bosses to look after, new mandates. What was it like doing? Because those are quite a few transitions in.
Yeah. So I think how do you move from being sort of an accountant and finance to before that, I had to learn about the nuclear industry. I had to learn about operational performance indicators, benchmarking, all that kind of stuff when I hadn't been in the nuclear industry at all. And then taking that to working in projects, and then planning projects. So it is sort of a bit of a broad kind of types of works. But I think, and you know, I'm not gonna lie. When I do get new jobs, I'm happy that I get these new jobs, but I'm also like, you know, I get a little bit scared, right? I have to kind of talk.
Authentic.
Yeah, that is authentic. Yeah, because I kind of have to talk myself into it. And I kind of, the things I kind of think of are, and this is what happened when I came to the nuclear industry. I would say coming to the nuclear industry was probably my biggest leap, right? It's that I have to remember that I have competencies, right? Now, I may not have a nuclear engineering degree, but I have competencies that can transfer from industry to industry or role to role, right? And that could be, you know, my financial competency, my whatever soft skill competencies, my ability to learn quickly. So I think that you have to always remember that there are transferable skills, and that the other thing too is that you can't rest on those competencies. You have to learn the business you're in. So I can't tell you how many hours I spent when I first started the nuclear business, sitting down with engineers, talking about the metrics and the KPIs and I didn't even know what an FLR was when I started in the industry. I didn't even know what an outage was. And so I had to learn everything from scratch. And but I would say a lot of people helped me through that. But I had to recognize that I had to sit down and actually roll up my sleeves and spend hours and hours and hours learning as much as possible, right? Because you can't fake. I mean, people say fake it till you make it, but you really gotta put the time and effort in, right? And then you got to keep learning, right? It doesn't matter what roles you have. You still have to build on your skill sets and your knowledge and keep learning and learning and learning. And then after that, you get more confident, right? So I call this the 3 C's of Carla. It's the competency, the confidence. So you start building the confidence and sustaining it. So you need to do those things. But as you become more competent, you become more confident. So it's kind of a bit of a cyclical thing. And then the other thing I think that you need to be able to kind of make those kinds of transitions is somewhat courage. Leaps of faith. So that's my 3rd C, is courage. And because you're going to take roles on that are outside of your comfort zone, right? And it's not always about moving up the ladder, right? Everybody's like, I want the next job, moving up the ladder. It's about, I call it the jungle gym approach, right? You're going from one ladder to the other and you're moving up, but maybe laterally. And that's how you build those competencies, the confidence that you need for the next role. But you really do need the courage, right, to do that. And so I would just say, don't ever dismiss any opportunity that is offered because you think you can't do it. Really think about what you can bring to the role, and build on that. And sometimes just be courageous.
Well, I mean, that's a wonderful message: competence, confidence, and courage.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing that I take from that is you can't replace anything. You can't replace hard work.
No, and that's
hard work, and
that's a bit of a table stakes, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you have to put the hours in, and there's just no way around that. You have to read, you have to learn, you have to talk to people, you have to go to school, maybe whatever it is, you have to put the work in.
Yeah. You remember that famous book by Outliers? Malcolm Gladwell. You got to do 10,000 hours to gain some competency. So when you see a great tennis player hit a tennis ball, it looks easy.
I know.
I could do. That's easy to do.
Exactly.
But what's forgotten is the 10,000 hours that Carla's putting in to become a nuclear knowledgeable person.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So of all those leadership roles then you've had, which one has been the most challenging for you that required the most courage.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's true. I think the most challenging was probably my stint in the refurbishment project. It was a different role because you're going right into project execution from sort of, I was in a corporate role in nuclear operations, but then moved to this 24/7 execution. Every blip cost a ton of money. So, and we were in constant crises, because how they say, we used to joke that we're on time and on budget, and it looks so smooth, but under the water we're all like ducks, right, with our legs going. But above the surface we're all like, everything's great. Right,
tiny ripple on the water.
That's right. So it's constantly like that, and having to figure things out, rallying the organization to get to our goals. And in fact, not many people kind of recognize it, but I did lead not just the commercial management and some of the strategic risk, but I also led project assurance, which was basically, we had hundreds of reviews and audits all the time on that project, right? And the criticism was constant. Even us good nuclear people that love to be given coaching and feedback, after a while you kind of start getting feeling like it's nothing but criticism. So so I find that it was all very challenging, right? And then to boot, at the last year I was there, the Auditor General came in, and I had to lead that effort. And I remember Jeff Lyash, our previous president, who was full of quotes, if you remember him. He always had a quote for something. He basically gave me this Theodore Roosevelt quote, and I kind of use it today. I actually put it on my wall when he gave it to me, and then I've been using it. I kind of keep it on my wall even today. But it's really, because you are in this project and you're constantly sort of being in battle, right? So the quote is, it's a Theodore Roosevelt quote, and it's not the critic, I'm going to read it. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who knows great enthusiasm, great devotion, who, if he fails, at least fails daringly. So the courage, you'll always have critics. So kind of trying to keep that in mind as you move through any of those kinds of situations is always good. So I do keep it on my wall. It's one of my favorite little, it's a long quote. It's actually, I kind of made it short, but it kind of always makes me realize, what, it's always different when you're criticizing from the outside than when you're inside, right? So I'd say that was one of my most challenging roles. But I also say that was probably one of my funnest roles, if it makes sense, the most enjoyable role. We had a lot of great teamwork. We had like real can-do spirit going, right? We had that attitude that we're going to get this done. And I would say too that we had the purpose, right? Refurbishment at that time, the purpose, we were the first unit being refurbed. And we kind of knew that there was a lot riding on it, right? There was a lot on the industry. There was the rest of our project. There was the Bruce Power MCR. There was SMRs. There was all the future. We felt like future of nuclear was riding on, whether we could do it or not. So, and I think that's what inspired me to say, okay, I did one unit. It was a great experience. It was like 4 years. Now I want to sort of start planning the next big project that's coming down the pipeline, right? The decommissioning of Pickering. So it was a challenging role, but it was also really, really inspirational and motivational.
And you must have had experienced a lot of pride last June when they declared Unit 1 or Unit 2 in service.
Oh yeah, for sure.
On budget, and
yeah. I was just disappointed we couldn't have a in-person party over that, because
exactly,
yeah. But yeah, it was a great feeling to see that that happen.
Yeah, we did the best we could. We had sort of an online celebration with Dietmar and Gary Rose, and Bill Owen and so forth. And the theme that kept coming across, is that we were one team.
Yeah.
The owner, the suppliers work collaboratively to solve problems and
exactly. It's all about collaboration for sure.
So are you, this isn't one of my questions I thought about, but are you an admirer of Teddy Roosevelt? Because I think he embodies what you said in that quote.
Yeah,
It's very courageous things, explored, fought in battles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it was just interesting because we don't always go back to all the American presidents and stuff, but being with Jeff Lyash, he was always quoting the American president. So you by virtue had to learn a lot about that, right? So yeah, anyways, I really like that quote.
A lot to be admired there. So we talked about early on about what it takes to be a good leader. Is there anything you want to add? You mentioned authenticity and honesty, vision.
I think that's pretty much it. To me, it is the authenticity. I had when I worked before the nuclear industry, I worked in the cell phone industry and for a global leader, and I had a manager, or I guess a leader. She was so authentic. I was actually shocked about how authentic she was. Really? Because and but people really resonated with that, and it made me understand that you have to be your true you, because otherwise, first of all, you'd probably be unhappy, and second of all, if you're fake, people will really know that, right? They'll know that you're not being the true you, and they'll feel it, and there's always going to be that awkwardness, right? And so when I came in the nuclear industry is pretty everybody's wearing their, well, I don't know now anymore with COVID, but everybody's wearing their ties, and it was very structured, and meetings started at 7 and all that stuff, and it was very formal, I would say. I came from a high-tech industry, so it was very different. And then I tried to kind of fit into that industry, into the industry by being very serious all the time, and wearing my suits and all that stuff. And I remember it was actually Mark Elliott, speaking of mentors, maybe.
Good guy.
He pulled me aside after, I think it was at Snipham's. We were at Snipham's. He was one of the mentors, and he pulled me aside and he said, "This week I've learned who Carla is," right? And he said, "That's not the same Carla as I see at nuclear NEC meetings and the work you do. Be more Carla, and when you come back, and you will be more successful." And it was sort of a very interesting thing he said, and I kind of took that to heart. And so now you get the real me.
Well, I mean, and the other thing is, it's very hard to live a lie.
Yeah.
Because you have to always wonder about consistency. But if you're honest and truthful,
and it's not necessarily a lie. It's just who you think people want you to be. Yeah. But you just got to be true to yourself, right? And so it makes it easier for everybody, I would say. And then you resonate more with people because you're being the true you, right?
Well, one thing we can't hide, Carla, I mean, you're a woman in the nuclear industry, so that's who you are.
That's true.
What was it like? I mean, you came into nuclear from other industries.
Yeah.
What challenges did you face as a woman in our industry?
Well, I would say that over the 13 years, the industry's changed a lot.
Yeah.
When I first, it was interesting because when I first got the job, I was at a Christmas party, and I was telling a lawyer, a friend of my husband's, that, hey, I'm changing jobs. I'm going to work in the nuclear industry. And he was just like shocked. He was trying to talk me out of it because he was saying, "Oh my God, it's all going to be guys, and they don't, like, there's no women, and you might not be treated well, blah, blah," all that stuff. So it got kind of my confidence a bit rattled. But I was kind of happy to say that when I did join, I didn't find any, sense of, sexism or anything like that. No, not at all. I thought everybody was so professional and respectful, and there's nothing like that. However, what I would say is there are these systemic barriers, right, that have been created over the years, whether it's lack of role models, because there were no women at the time, other than, there was a few, Lori Swami, you know, very few. And even then, there was no anybody above sort of a vice president level until a few years later. And even like, you know, things like meetings starting at 7 a.m. in the nuclear industry, right? That makes it very hard for women who have to send their kids to daycare and bring them to school or whatever. 7 a.m. starts are pretty tough. I think now with COVID and the ability to maybe call in to meetings will be is much more helpful. But, you know, it's just these systemic issues that, you know, have been in place for so long that people don't even recognize them as being barriers to women advancing. Things like, I mean, I don't have to tell this group, but, you know, the authorized nuclear operator license program, training program, that also had some systemic barriers, which as Dawn we're trying to fix. But so I'd say it wasn't, you know, open, you know, barriers, but it was this underlying processes, culture that sort of didn't allow maybe women to advance as they could. So I'd say that that's what I was faced with. And, you know, like every day I started, there was things like that. I had to be at a 7 a.m. meeting with the CNO, and I was scrambling to find daycare, things like that, right? And if you're not at that table, then, you know, you're not being heard and seen.
And, you know, those are unwitting barriers. I don't think
Yeah.
the people that call the 7 a.m. meeting said, let's do this so we can keep Carla out of it.
No, absolutely not. It's
just,
that's what I'm saying. It's unconscious. It's unconscious
Yeah.
bias, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's all those things were pretty apparent when I started. I think things have changed somewhat, trying to change. There's been a lot of good movement. That's why I say 13 years, I've seen a lot of change.
Yeah. Well, I have to draw attention. I'm a great admirer of your current president, Ken. Well, I love Jeff Lash as well. But Ken Hartwick,
Yes.
You know, he won't appear on a panel unless it's appropriately diverse.
Exactly. And that's what everybody should be doing, right?
Really living the talk.
Yeah. And the other way too, right? You know, I find being sort of this advocate of women in the industry, you know, you get asked to be on a lot of panels. And I know, you know, I was talking to Miss Velshi during one of our Dawn meetings, and she even said, you know, we're not going to go on panels that are only women talking about women's issues, right? Because that's another perpetrator of this thing, right? And so you need men talking about it, and you need women on panels that demonstrate that they're technically capable, that they're nuclear, you know, industry experts, not just advocates for women's rights. So even the way we present ourselves as women in the industry, we have to sort of fine tune that as well.
You mentioned Dawn a couple of times. You know, expand. Some of them may not know the acronym, but it's an exciting program. Tell us a bit about Dawn and what it stands for and what you're doing with Dawn.
Sure. So Dawn is driving the advancement of women in nuclear. And it kind of started as a grassroots thing. It still is a grassroots thing, I would say, with Ms. Velshi, Ms. Swami, and myself. We were on a panel.
Ms. Carmichael.
Ms. Carmichael, yes. We were on a panel, just, you know, on a win panel during one of our women's events. And we started talking. It was very open. It was, you know, closed door room session. And then after we got together, the three of us, and we kind of were just debriefing and talking about it. And we had so many people come up to us, we couldn't even get out of the room, right? And we thought, geez, we should probably think about doing something here. And so with Ms. Velshi's support and this, you know, a lot of the organization support, we created Dawn, and with very specific three task forces, so each of us is leading a task force. And I would say it's not to replace women in nuclear. We're all women in nuclear. But it's to enhance women in nuclear. It's to provide women in nuclear with senior women in the industry that can be role models and lead and be open and honest and authentic about their journeys, so that we can provide that role modeling for women in nuclear. But it's also to use our abilities and our influence to change things, like the authorized nuclear operator training program, which, you know, has certain CNSC regulations. And so who better to, you know, try to break that barrier than, you know, the president. And then, you know, how to build confidence in the women that are going through the journey of this industry. So we're linking up with Women in Nuclear. They have a confidence workshop that they run, and if anybody's interested, please go and sign up. It's quite amazing. But what we're doing as senior women is that we go to the beginning of that workshop and we tell our story for like the first 5 or 10 minutes, just to give, you know, that authentic leadership. And so so I'd say that's what Dawn is. And so we've got, you know, LinkedIn group, LinkedIn site. So please, if you want to look at it and see more about it, I would encourage you to do that. Everyone, women and men.
Is there a formal? There isn't a membership. Like WIN has a membership.
Yeah. No, it's
Dawn,
very
it's just
grassroots. It's just an initiative. That's right. It complements Women in Nuclear. But it's trying to really advance some key things in the industry.
Wow. Okay. Well, I hope there's lots of women on the call today who might follow up on that. And we should put something out, Rachel, now that I think about it, in one of our next newsletters.
Oh, that'd be great.
Who would send us a little bit about Dawn? Is there, do you have a person?
I'll send you something. I'll get Yeah, we've been using different comms people to help at different organizations. Our recent one kind of has gone to another role, so we are just working on the next person. But I'll send you information.
We'll push that out. So, so just as we continue to talk about leadership, we'll get to CCNS in a minute. But what are you doing as you know, as you progress in your leadership roles? What are you doing to continue to grow and become an even better leader, if that's possible, than you are now?
It's possible. Oh yes, I would say. Interestingly, during COVID, I don't know about the rest of you, but I've had a lot of time to, you know, think and reflect. Right? I think many of us have. Even though it is busy, crazy, there's still that, you know, you're not commuting, you're not going to conferences, you're not traveling. There's more time to sort of reflect, I think, versus being, pardon?
And eat and drink.
And drink, yeah, for sure. The COVID-19 isn't 2019, it's the pounds we've gained. But, you know, I think in our pre-COVID, our pre-COVID lives, I call it BC, before COVID. I used to call that before children. Now I just call it before COVID. BC, we were so busy, right? We didn't really have time to think, or it was easy to be busy and not think, right? So I think honestly at the beginning, I did struggle with the slowdown mentally and just, you know, trying to figure out what to do with myself. But I've learned to reflect more over COVID, right? And reflect on, you know, what my mental health is, what I'm thinking, how things impact me. I've learned to listen more. You can't help it by, you know, I think you can't help it by being on these virtual calls, that you really have to try harder to listen, because you don't have those cues that you typically would have, like in a meeting room or in the lunch room or whatever. So you're trying to listen more. And I also think I've become, I think, hopefully more mindful and even more compassionate towards people, and trying to understand a lot more, you know, other sides. And again, like I said, I think that's all part of being a better leader. And it helps me, I think, grow as a leader, but also as a human being, right? So those are things that I never probably would have said 2-3 years ago, that being more mindful and all that stuff would make me a better person, but I think it has. And I mean, I think you got to take the good out of COVID that you can, and you know, understand that there are some positive things that have probably come out of it.
Well, like the ability to do this.
Yeah, it'd be
We
great.
learn how to meet face to face. I mean, we don't want to go on forever.
Yeah.
I'm going to put in a plug for OCNI's first in-person event in almost not discounting the golf games, but we're having a gala dinner with Minister Todd Smith on April the 4th.
Oh, good. Okay.
So hopefully you can join us and some of your OPG colleagues. And
Sure.
it's partly we're going to celebrate the end of winter, the end of COVID, I hope, and of course a great energy minister that we've got.
Yeah. He's great. Yeah, he came to our first annual celebration of the CCNS, so it was nice to have him there.
Well, yeah, I saw him there. He's such an engaging.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
One other thing about leadership qualities, and I had a discussion with a female leader, I guess a couple of years ago in another industry, and she said one of the important characteristics of her leadership style is humility. That kind of surprised me. I said I didn't think humility was something that leaders embrace. Any thoughts? I think thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. I think that if you want to resonate as an authentic leader, you have to be able to show that you've got humility, that you are self-deprecating, that you do not know everything. I probably should have said that when I go from job role to role. Is my first thing I say to everybody is, I don't know anything. You know, you guys are the experts. I just have other skills that I'm going to bring to this. Yeah, you have to have humility, because you're not then resonating with the broader team and the people you're trying to lead, because nobody's perfect. People are insecure. It's just human nature, and you have to kind of show that. Right?
Yeah, and I guess people can relate to a leader who admits some vulnerability.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we've talked about how our industry has evolved, and certainly, I mean, people don't smoke at work anymore. That's a wonderful thing. And you're seeing a lot of women in senior leadership roles, and maybe we're going through a pivot with climate change being such an important part of our mandate, and we want to save the planet. Are there other changes that you've seen in your 13-year journey in nuclear that you might want to highlight?
Yeah. So, it's been incredibly. I think the environment has changed completely. Like I said, when I first started, nuclear was a bit of a you're going to work in the nuclear industry, like, aren't you afraid? Aren't you scared? Like, it's kind of like a dirty word. I would say now there's so much positivity in the industry and advancements, I would say. And I would even, every time I turn around, and I don't know if I'm just more attuned to it, but every time I turn around, we're talking about social issues. We're talking about advocacy for, the sort of environmental, social issues of the world, not just our little company or industry. So I think that that's really changed. I don't think that that's necessarily unique to our industry, but I do believe that that's been really, really encouraging to see. Being able to build sort of that perspective into everything you do and plan and think is no longer that's going to cost us money, or that's not the process or whatever. It's now like those are front and center of what we're trying to do. And then we have to sort of get the rest to align with that. So I think that that's been a change, and it's been a great change.
Yeah, positive one. And I had the benefit of being at the announcement that Westinghouse made yesterday of their new Avinci funding out of SIF. And the Minister of Innovation was there, Francois Champagne, such an enthusiastic support for industry. Karina Gold was there. 2 other MPs were there. It was great to see two ministers and two MPs all saying such great things about our industry. So it's
Mhm.
nice to celebrate. And we
Yeah,
should
for
do
sure.
more. Celebrate our successes. So
Yeah.
so let's turn to those four big letters right over your left shoulder. They're staring me right in the eye.
Brand
So,
awareness, brand awareness.
yeah, tell us a bit. Well, I love the logo. Tell us a bit about CCNS and the important role that it is playing and will play in the nuclear industry in Canada.
Okay, so I always say CCNS is focused on the end of the life cycle, end of the nuclear life cycle. We have strong operations, we have strong project management, refurbishments, and we actually have strong end of the life cycle plans and processes. So nuclear waste and decommissioning, I would say, are our focus areas. And even though we know we have good plans and funding for all of this and the right approach, I don't think the rest of the world does, right? I mean, those are the two areas that always get criticized the most or challenged the most, right? Now that operations are doing well and we actually can demonstrate that we can actually do a project, a large 13 billion or whatever, $12 billion project on time and on budget. Now the movement will be to this. And so it's going to be really important for us to be able to demonstrate that we have, we have strong competencies in these areas, strong plans, that we're progressive, and that we also continue to look for opportunities, that we don't sort of rest on our laurels, right? And with all of that, the intent or the vision is that nuclear will be a sustainable energy source for the future, for future generations, right? This whole clean energy, climate change goals are all going to be supported by nuclear, and to support nuclear and enable it and the adoption of future SMRs and new nuclear, we need to, make sure that these two areas are addressed as appropriately as the rest of the life cycle, right? So that's why we created the CCNS, and yes, we are focused on Pickering nuclear generating station decommissioning because that's on the horizon, but it's broader approaches for the industry. So how do you decommission an SMR, right? We have to plan for that as well, and how do you reduce, reuse, recycle sort of the nuclear materials? How do you change the concept of a nuclear station that's no longer operating from being a liability on your balance sheet and as seen by the rest of the world as a liability to an asset, right? How do you change all that? And so that's the CCNS's mission and vision.
Well, I'm sure that the town of Pickering and the Durham region would love to see Pickering site repurposed to generate wealth and opportunities. I guess that's one of the things you guys are also looking at, like potentially repurposing.
Absolutely. We've always been looking at repurposing. What are we going to do with that site? Now, I think people envision that if Pickering proper, the Pickering station proper, we basically put it in a surveillance period for a long period of time that, that's necessarily, doesn't create this repurposing opportunity, but we're trying to get away from that, where that's a big site. There's 600 plus acres. And there's a lot of things we can do on that site. And so the company is looking at, the vision of even taking different sections. Can you use it for renewable energy? Could you do, there's just so much that can be done on that site. And so instead of thinking of it as a boarded up site, think of it as, maybe Pickering power block, might be, contained for a while, but there's so much opportunity for the rest of the site, and so much opportunity to bring sort of investment and innovation for the region to that site that's focused on, clean energy and renewable energy, and in particular, hopefully nuclear energy, because that, a little bit near to my heart. And so how do you make Durham region clean energy capital of the world? Well, you look at that Pickering site and take it from a liability to an asset.
Yeah. Well, you used the word innovation in your last statement. I guess we're looking at innovative ways. Are there any particular innovations that have come out so far out of CCNS that you're most proud of?
Well, we have launched some innovation projects. We just started that last year. They're listed on our website, and we're always advancing other ones. And it's really around trying to minimize the liabilities coming out of that station. But what I would say is innovation is not just technical innovation, right? It's just a way of behavior and attitudes being innovative too, right? How do you get people rallied together, multiple different vendors, let's say, who typically would look after their own commercial, goals and objectives, to come together and think of innovative ways to partner and collaborate to face this, one of our biggest challenges, right? And what I would say is I've seen a lot of movement in that. And I think you mentioned it earlier around creating this A team, right? Because the A team is only going to be created by various companies, members, people, because it's not just one company or one individual that's going to make this successful. It's a very challenging project, right? So I'd say the innovative ways they're coming together to start addressing or helping the challenge has been really, really exceptional. And I think that that's just a different way of thinking of innovation, right? It's not just technical stuff, it's innovations in thought and processes that will, help drive this forward.
So what you're referring to then, I guess, is CCNS is a hub where you've got your major partners, your ambassadors, and your next level partners, and we're proud to be a community partner. So is that working, that you're getting a number of companies and your team together in a big room? And I was there a few weeks ago and there was little sticky pads all over the walls. People are throwing stuff on the wall.
Yeah. Well, that's the idea, right? I mean, we wanted it to be sort of Google-ish, but create an innovative, foster sort of that innovative spirit and opportunity. Now with COVID, unfortunately, we've seen a lot of it locked down, but we have our 3 ambassadors sit there, right? So you can't help but talk about issues and collaborate just on even sort of what should we be focusing on. And so it is about driving that collaboration. And my favorite thing is when I get an email from one of the partners, and it could be anybody. I've got several of them, and they just are like, Carla, I know the biggest challenge is X for, this project. And I've gotten together with this community partner and that catalyst and this ambassador partner, and we're going to come to you with to discuss what we think can be done here. And that to me is the best thing ever, right? Because it could be, somebody's calling up Ontario Tech or OCNI or whatever, and they're trying to work something out. And it's not about us trying to push it. It's them now going, you know what, we need to kind of come together as partners and provide solutions and opportunities. And yeah, we can't do everything, but I would say that's my favorite email to receive or call.
And Carla, you'll recall that OCNI, NII, COG, and CCNS got together and promoted a survey to really understand what are the barriers to innovation.
Exactly, yeah.
And the phrase, well, we've always done it that way. And I think one of the key findings is it isn't so much the customer pulling it, it's people getting together and proposing ideas.
Right, exactly,
you want a smarter business, you want to do things better, you go to the customer and say, here's an idea. What do you think about doing it this way rather than the way we did it last week?
Exactly, yeah, no, and that's the best feeling when you see that happening, right? Or and they're coming to you and you're like, oh, I haven't had to, put a scope of work out and make it official and all that stuff. It's more that they're generating ideas and talking about it, and we're all working together. And honestly, it is that A team feeling, right?
Well, you got some great people on your team. I mean, I have most contact with Sabrina. She's just a delight to work with. You guys supported our decommissioning team, and it's a pleasure. And you're neighbors of ours. So
yes, we are. And I would say that the other thing too is that I've been, maybe conscientiously, where I can, bring in new blood in, new young people in the industry, because first of all, they're going to be there for the future. It's a very long-term project, so we have to think about the transfer of knowledge and for a very long time. But they also bring sort of this new way, right? This new way of thinking and challenging. It's like, why are we doing it that way, right? Even for me, I've been 13 years and now I'm like, I need to be challenged, right? So you have to surround yourself with that. You have to put processes or break processes that don't enable innovation and sort of that collaboration. While also still being mindful that we are, we're owned by the shareholder, we're owned by the ratepayers, and we have obligations, right? So can't do anything too crazy, but there's always opportunity.
Yeah, and we're a highly regulated industry, so it's not quite like running a small IT shop.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It's a balance. So we talked about the supply chain. Are there any other things that OCNI and the supply chain can do to help you achieve your CCNS goals?
Well, first of all, keep lines of communication open, be part of our, when we're doing call outs to come and talk about certain things, or now hopefully we'll be opening the center and people will be there all the time. I'd also say just over the last few weeks, one of the things that has been maybe, you always have something that's keeping you up at night, is the fact that I think our industry will change again because of the war in Ukraine. Just like when Fukushima happened, a lot of things came out of Fukushima that the industry was agile and capable of responding to. But, when they went into Chernobyl, I was kind of like, oh, this is the kind of thing that occurs that kind of can change your plans pretty quickly on how you're going to decommission and what, and, the processes because of the risk. And so I think that as an industry, we just have to think about the impacts that this is going to have on us and be able to be agile and nimble in responding to it. Because I think everybody's busy with, obviously focused on, what's going on over there. But once things hopefully settle down, now it'll be like, okay, for the nuclear industry, what do we have to do? How do we address things? How do we approach things to address, concerns and things like that? So it'll be interesting for our industry, but because it was a decommissioned site that was first sort of approached, I think, there'll be lots of questions for us.
Yeah, like should we decommission faster and close it up sooner rather than?
Or there might be opportunities, right? Yeah. I mean, talking about waste repositories, right? Yeah. So, now, how do we advance repositories in light of this, right? So I think there will be opportunities, and then there will be things we will have to address, right?
I guess we've recognized the potential of terrorist threats. And that's built into our defenses. No one ever envisaged a threat by a major nation state.
Right. I always, one of our, we have risk registers like everybody else. And one of our risks is that changing regulations could impact, what we do, or, the costs and all that stuff. Right. And I used to always know that was a risk, particularly if you have a very long period of surveillance period. But I always said, hey, we got to watch out what's going on with other decommissioned sites, because if anything should happen, we could be, required to do something else. I never kind of thought a war would do that, though, right? You never think of that.
No, I never did that.
And I'm like, I never thought a world war, whatever, potentially was going to be the catalyst that, made that risk maybe a reality. So I think, never say never, I guess, and always have to be open and ready and assessing things, right? because there's always a domino impact to everything.
And you know, this is close to home for us. Carla, OCNI signed an MOU with Energoatom about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks. And the Energoatom people were in the boardroom in their head office in Kiev. And we had a nice ceremony, and we're planning a trade mission sometime in the fall to Ukraine and Poland.
Yeah.
And 6 weeks later, you know, I lost touch with the embassy. And although I did get a note from one of my colleagues at Energoatom, he said, Ron, thanks for asking, but we're safe. So
yeah, well,
I just don't know where they are, what's happened.
Yeah, well, I'm on the IAEA technical committee for decommissioning, and there's quite a few people from Ukraine and Russia, people that work at Chernobyl, so I've also wondered, you know, how they're doing, and we wish them all obviously the best, and we're here for them as an industry.
Yeah. Well, I don't like to end this on a sad note.
Yeah.
So how the last comments could be, any other remarks that you want to leave for our audience about leadership, about CCNS, about Carla Carmichael, and the 3 C's?
Yeah, the 3 C's. No, just, you know, it's a great industry. I've enjoyed every minute of it. And I'm very happy that I didn't listen to the naysayer that was trying to talk me out of coming to the industry. But there's lots of opportunity out there too, other industries. You know, always sort of as a leader, be true to yourself. You know, if culturally, you know, I love the nuclear industry because it kind of fits with who I am, which is pretty, you know, organized, and I kind of like the authoritarian and disciplined approach. So I liked it. Not everybody might like it. You got to kind of be true to yourself with the culture and the industry that you're in. So make sure that, you know, they align. And it's always a pleasure talking about these things, and I really want to express my thanks for inviting me. I was very humbled by it because I know you've had other leaders that I'm sort of like, you know, always in awe of. So
well, there's the leadership humility that you're
yeah, that's right.
There's no need to.
Yeah.
You're right up
yeah.
there.
So yeah, and then the last thing I wanted to say was congratulations on your retirement, your pending retire. Oh no, we're not saying stepping down. Well, actually, I was telling Ron, I heard a word recently, and it's called you're not retiring, you're refiring. So I think, Ron, I can see that in you, that you're probably just going to refire into something else. So good luck with that, and appreciate everything you've done in the industry, including, you know, many years working in our operations, and then taking the supply chain forward for the last 11 years. So, and I know it's been a journey, because, you know, restarting that supply chain for refurbishment and MCR projects and everything going forward, it's a big challenge, and you know, did a great job.
I can't take the credit. I mean, we've got 2 great utilities, a lot of great people in our industry. I mean, this is the 13th one in the series, and Rachel's managed all of them for us, but we've just had some amazing discussions through this series, and there's just great people in our industry, which is maybe why.
There is great people, for sure.
Not only talented, but ethically and principled good people.
Yep.
So thanks so much, Carla. Thank you, Rachel, for managing this for us. You want to? I think we've recorded this session, so you can share it with your mother, Carla, or anybody else in your family wants to hear it. So I'll turn it over to you, Rachel, just to say to sign it off. So thanks again, Carla.
Thank you.
And thanks for kind words.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you again, Carla, for joining us and sharing your leadership journey. The recording for this episode will be available in the OCNI members portal, and don't forget to register for next week's event, Realizing Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion with Delcian, where we'll be giving kind of a virtual workshop on EDI strategies in the workplace on March 24th. To register, you can visit ocni.ca, and I just want to thank all the attendees for coming to this 13th episode of our Leader Series, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
You bet. All right. Thanks again. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Carl. Bye-bye.
Thank you.